about some basketball. We're going to be talking about some baseball. We're going to talk some DFS. We're going to talk some spreads. We might talk a little bit of championship betting odds because there's some interesting bets that I've seen out there. We're going to talk about it all. So jump on in. Make sure to say hi when you get in chat. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. BobbyFi off for 20% off of everything at BetQL. Make sure you want to get signed up for that. We had an interesting weekend. Me and Cheeks did a show already, but I had a real, was as close for a golf call. Like with about 9 holes to go, it was looking pretty good. Like I might have a good chance to make a lot of money. Ended up being a small profit weekend overall. Didn't play much. Been running really bad with injuries and rain and all kinds of stuff for about a week and a half. So I'm ready to turn it around today. Sheets, how about you? I know that you took down some MMA stuff and did some good things this weekend. What's going on with you?
My wife and kids, they pick on me. They say, Eric, what are you doing now? What is professional wrestling? And I'm like, guys, you don't understand. It's just the same thing. It's just whether it's wrestlers or baseball or basketball players, it's just data points on a freaking spreadsheet, and you're trying to figure out who are decent picks relative to the prices, relative to the ownership. Doesn't matter what you're betting on here. But you know what? For those of you that are married, you've had this conversation before, and it never goes well.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Sorry, I was just making sure because I'm having trouble finding this thing right now. I'm looking for it, and for some reason I'm not finding our video actually on YouTube, but it's being broadcast all over the other place and other places. Here it goes. It finally popped up. I think it was just hiccuping with the restream and whatnot. But anyway, we have an interesting NBA slate, even for a 2-gamer, and we have a really interesting baseball slate, which is also a small one, only a 7-gamer, which for us, by the way, these days feels like pretty easy, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you've got, look, I wake up and I see Saturday morning. By the time I wake up, I got Sheets has done 7 different videos on NASCAR and, like you said, wrestling and MMA and all that kind of stuff. Now we've got it simple, just baseball and basketball. So I think we're going to start off with basketball. I don't know if we'll get information on the show about anything in regards to it, but if we do, we can always revisit that later. But let's go game by game and start talking about it from a DFS perspective and even potentially a betting perspective. I actually kind of have a strong take on this Milwaukee-Miami series. So let's get into it. First, that's the first game. We have a 225 total. You have Miami as a 5.5 point. I'm sorry, Milwaukee is a 5.5 point favorite. I sort of like Miami here. So there's a lot of things that you can track going back through Giannis' history. Miami's always done the best job on him. Now, also, there's been twice that he's played in Miami, and they've only played there a few times a year. 2 of the games, I know for sure he was spotted out the night before, so we don't have to worry about anything like that in these kind of situations from a DFS perspective. But they've done a good job, and they seem like the type of switchable defense that will be able to hang with a team like the Bucks. And I think this is going to be a really, really competitive series, and it's going to be one Giannis is going to have to figure out a way to overcome, because I think in the first game I'm going to come out, I would bet straight away on Miami to not only to maybe cover the spread, but to potentially win this game and get some pretty good odds here. What are your thoughts about that?
Who do you think is going to guard Giannis?
It's going to be a combination of Bam. I think Bam is the primary defender. And I think that you're going to get elements of all kinds of guys I think they're going to make it like a little cocoon, and they have enough guards who are rangy and switchable enough that they can probably recover to most 3-point shooters, especially because, with Bledsoe on the court, you only have 3 other good 3-point shooters at each time usually. So I think you might see some Jimmy Butler on him, by the way. I think that makes a lot of sense too. But you'll see a lot of traps, a lot of combinations, a lot of things trying to build a wall around him inside, and I think they'll dare him to shoot. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see the spread as low as it was. Milwaukee's only a 5.5 point favorite. I'm just not used to Milwaukee being less than a 14-point favorite over anybody. So you know how I look at that. That means Miami's probably a lock. So that's the way it goes. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so it's funny though, because Miami is a 6-1 underdog in this series. You got plus 600 for Milwaukee. I don't care. I don't think I think Milwaukee will win the series, but I think Miami's like the best. You're not going to get bets that good on a playoff series that I actually think is really closer to even. Look, it's all the question, isn't it? Like, is this the time Giannis takes that next jump? Because so far, this is the same thing. We've seen the same story. We've seen even the Magic do a somewhat of a job with it in this series, in this first round, where they can kind of build a wall around Giannis. And if Middleton has been the Middleton we've seen, this could be a really tough series for them, especially. I really think of all the teams that match up with them, I don't think anybody matches up better than Miami in the East. I don't think there's one team they could play that would be tougher for them than Miami.
The other thing that's going to be interesting is, well, among other things, is how is whether Duncan Robinson could have a good series. I mean, considering that Milwaukee just likes to give up the three. And it's going to be interesting. You know, it's going to be some interesting adjustments that have to be made as far as personnel goes. I don't know where it's going to be a fascinating series, honestly. If Milwaukee is not that much better than they are, and we're going to find out, I think, pretty soon. It could be a really, really interesting cat and mouse game because look, Miami's got a lot of guys they could throw in there, depending on what they want to do, and it's going to be. I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated by it. Originally, when I first saw the matchup, I'm like, oh God, another freaking stupid Eastern Conference series. I'm becoming a little more interested in it.
Yeah, I'm into this one. I think it's going to be a tight one, and I think this first game especially is going to be really important. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and pick Miami to win this game, even though I do think Milwaukee wins the series. And I think it's going to be a great series. I just think this is it's an interesting. And then let's get into the DFS aspect of it, because I think that the common thing to do for everybody and that gets to the playoffs, it's Jimmy Butler time, all that stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And then I look at his ownership is not very projected to be very high, which sort of surprised me, because I sort of thought I was going to fade Jimmy Butler chalkiness. And I actually think that now I can go the other way. The thing that's different about him, why I don't love the matchup as much for him, what Milwaukee will try and get you to do is shoot outside shots. And they defend them well, but they also allow the most. So it's, figure that one out. Jimmy Butler is not a 3-point shooter. He's a 24% 3-point shooter. He's probably going to shoot a couple in this series, and he'll probably take some long twos. But in terms of attacking the basket, this is not exactly a great spot, which is what he's thrived on so far in the playoffs, in the bubble in general. He's been drawing, I think he's got the second most free throws drawn in the bubble, or the third maybe, but he's right there. So to me, the natural guys, unfortunately, are going to be the popular guys who I was going to go not play a lineup without Dragic today. I think he's the automatic play, in my opinion. And then I think Bam is very close to being the same thing, especially on DraftKings. Well, actually, no, on both sides, actually.
I ranked Bam a little bit higher than Dragic. But, yeah, they're both definitely top plays. I don't know what it is about Dragic. I guess I never play him as much as I'm supposed to.
You got to know it's been different. And also there's something we should even mention about this. Kendrick Nunn, came in and played his first game in the playoff. He was their starting point guard all year long. Like, nothing happened. Just we had a break. That was really all that happened. And the truth is they're better with Dragic and Hero. But Nunn could certainly play a role. And we have him accounted for 0 minutes right now. I'm not so sure that sticks. So I just want to throw that out there.
Well, let's talk about all this Miami stuff, because, I mean, there's a lot. As I said, there's a lot of ways this could go. So do you just try to take your shot and figure out, like which is the lowest owned of all these guys, or do you just like fade the game and just go with the surer minutes in other spots? I don't know. Like, for example, like between Harrow, Jay Crowder, Iguodala, just throw 3 guys out there. I mean, do you like any of them more than the other, or where are you?
Wait, who did you say between Iguodala and
I said Harrow, Crowder, and Iguodala.
Well, Iguodala is the cheapest, so I think he makes a lot of sense and he'll have some ownership. I don't think anyone's going to play Tyler Hero. So you could immediately just play a tournament lineup and play the Hero angle. The funny part is, though, I just want to warn anybody who does play him, because of he doesn't really run a true point. So I think we're in a weird spot here. Like you're not going to get the assist. You're kind of required to get the offense, but it's kind of expensive for that. And then if I was going to make that play, I think Duncan Robinson's the better play, who has forward eligibility.
Well, that's what I mean. Because then you get Dragic and Duncan Robinson. All as good plays. You can play 7 guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's really
they have a lot of guys on their team you can play. But again, this is a pace-up matchup for them. We have a very strange next game that we have to pick from, and I'm telling you, it's a really hard game to find players to play in. So we can play a lot of Miami guys. I think the way that I have it prioritized, I think Crowder will be the popular guy in the 4K range. I think Duncan Robinson is the better tournament play. Crowder certainly would be the guy you'd play more in cash games, but I think Duncan Robinson, just with the shooting ability, I don't like his price, but I do think that it's just a guy who can make 8 threes in a game and who's going to be low owned on a 2-game slate that can change. And he's going to have the opportunity to. He's going to have the opportunity to probably take 6 or 7 3-point shots at least. And if he's making 2 or 3 of them, I think you're going to see him take 11 or 12 of them. That's the kind of volume shooter that he is. You look, and he's been quiet, and he's still taking on average 6 threes a game or 5.5 a game. No, it's actually 6. 6 a game during this time, and then during the bubble overall, he's at almost 10 a game. That's the kind of guy I want to play on a 2-game slate that can get me 35 fantasy points potentially, and is going to be low on. So I really like that idea. I don't think you should have ultimately high expectations about it, because I do think there is a bust path here. Easily. I don't think this is like a cash conversation, but so Bam, Dragic, Duncan Robinson, and Iguodala are my 4 favorites, and it's hard to rank them because they're all such different price tiers. So obviously Iguodala is the cheap guy. I like the Duncan Robinson pivot off of Crowder, although I'm fine with Crowder. And then I like Dragic and Bam. And I'm telling you though, if people aren't going to play Jimmy Butler because of perception or because he got injured in the last game, or he still came back and played a closeout game, I don't entirely understand why no one would play him. I sort of thought that was going to be like my own read on things, but I guess it's that they're all just trying to cram up and pay for 2 spend-ups. I don't know how they're going to do that. Anyway, I think Jimmy Butler is more in play than I thought he was. I thought we were going to see 40 to 60%. I think we're going to see like 25%.
It's so funny. I talk about this all the time about how, the way I kind of build lineups at first look always seems to, whether I know it or not, represent kind of the way the public would build, right? Mm-hmm. So it's funny. When we were going to have our NBA talk, I didn't know whether we were going to do NBA, or other thing or whatever. I was going to say, boy, it's amazing. I'm getting to know Butler. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I guess no one's going to get to him. You know what I mean? I don't mean nobody, but if my kind of natural, so the way I just throw things out there leads me to not play Butler, I think that's what it is. I think that it's so, at least it seems so important to get like Giannis for openers, that it becomes very difficult to spend. You know what I mean? To make all this work the way you want.
Well, so let's get over to the Milwaukee side, because you just brought up an interesting point, which does change how you want to build. Now, all those Miami guys would make you want to especially try and include as many guys from Milwaukee, but that's exactly what everyone's going to do.
Yeah.
We have a weird situation with not knowing if Bledsoe's going to play. I think the good news is the first game. I wouldn't be surprised either way. We've seen this team, they have a lot of bodies, so I actually think he becomes a really good tournament play if he does play, because I think people are sort of iffy on him, and that sort of leaves him in that middling sort of ownership range, and he's actually a guy who could easily score 30 fantasy points here. I love the idea of fading Giannis today. I don't think this is optimal in these situations, don't get me wrong, but when the ownership's going to be that high, you can spread it out, and even if he scores 65 fantasy points, you have guys who are in mid-tier guys in the Dragic, Bam, Jimmy Butler, a lot of guys who are going to hit that 5 to 7x, whatever you want to say. And I think that might be enough to beat those Giannis lineups, because you're really reaching for value on this slate and playing guys like Iguodala, who has a 6% usage rate. You know what I mean? Like, it feels weird. So I'm actually sort of going to try to see if I can build with fading Giannis. Now, one thing you could do is play, hey, let's hope Middleton gets hot. Let's hope they try and get him going if he gets going early on. And we could play Middleton at no ownership on a 2-game slate. That's appealing to me. I just think you want to try and get different. And I also think, though, that like if you don't, Middleton or Butler, the fact that both these guys are going to be low owned, I promise you no one's playing these guys together and fading, or hardly anyone is, and playing and fading Giannis. So that's a route I'm flirting with. I don't think Middleton is any. Look, these are long shot tournament plays. These are not optimal plays. That's tournament plays. The optimal plays are Brook Lopez and Giannis. That's it. Period on this team. I think George Hill has a good argument too, especially if Bledsoe's out. But even if Bledsoe plays, I think George Hill's minutes has a higher minute ceiling than they have him for. However, I also think Pat Connaughton has a much higher minute ceiling than they have him for. These weird pieces are really hard to figure out, and people are going to play Marvin Williams because they're going to try and cram in this stuff. If I cannot cram in Marvin Williams and I cannot cram in Iguodala and not play Giannis, I think you're going to find a medium build that might pay off.
I didn't try it on DraftKings. So on FanDuel, the way I built on FanDuel was I did some lineups. I wanted to get both, for example, Harden and Giannis in, right? It's harder than you think, right?
Yeah.
You have to become like a real Lou Dort fan. You know what I mean? Like you got to really squint. And then what I tried to do is I tried to build a couple lines with just Giannis and a couple lines with just Harden. And then I did exactly what you said. I said, what does my lineup look like with neither of them, just for the hell of it, right? And you get some good players. Like you don't have to worry about Lou Dort. You don't have to worry about, other dudes. You know what I mean? Like
you actually play against people's personal recency bias, because there's a lot of these middling guys that like Middleton, for example. On a 2-game slate, Middleton, even at 8K, should never really be 9% or 5% or 7% owned, whatever he's going to be. That should never happen. Never. And it's going to happen, and it's a lot of recency bias, which, Sheets, we know one thing about this game. Like, you just forget all that stuff. Just forget it. It's all nonsense. And it's the playoffs. How are they going to go about it? Their best players are going to be featured. Obviously, that is Giannis number 1, but Middleton is number 2. And you have the number 2 star on a team who's not out of this crazy – he and Jimmy Butler seem like great tournament plays at their price. I'll just leave it at that part because I feel really strongly about that. I think the wild card play in this series, though, if you're going to play the George Hills and Connaughtons, while I like George Hill today a little bit because I think they're going to have some struggles, I think as the series progresses, you might see a giant Connaughton game or two. This guy is close with Giannis. They work out together. When it really comes down to crunch time, I feel like as the series progresses and they start feeling nervous, I think you might see more Connaughton, maybe a little less George Hill, maybe even a little less Eric Bledsoe. That's just my personal read. So maybe a little less interested today, but certainly something to keep an eye on going forward. And if you wanted to do it, I can't fault you because he is small forward eligible, and everyone's going to play Marvin Williams because he's 500 cheaper or Iguodala at 300 cheaper. I can just say that while Connaughton may not play as many minutes as Iguodala, he has got a much, much better chance at scoring 30 fantasy points than either of those guys do.
All right, I have a couple of and we talked about this offline before. We talked about, trying to win like a 2-game slate against a zillion people. Here's a couple of thoughts. One, if you want to really fade a really chalky play, I dare you to go to FanDuel and look at the power forward position, right?
Yeah.
So Bam is going to be like 8,000% owned over there.
Right.
Because if you don't play him, you end up having to play, like, for example, like Jeff Green and Covington together, which seems really, really disgusting to do, right? So Bam could be an interesting fade over there. And the other one I really just hit me. And again, you gotta really squint on this one. But if Eric Bledsoe is out, okay, George Hill is probably going to become pretty popular, right? If he's not already.
Right.
And now this guy hasn't really done much in the last couple of games, but maybe this could be the Dante DiVincenzo game where he finally gets some minutes and has a good game. Because when he was getting minutes, he was a guy I always would go to to be honest, a more expensive price than this. And he hasn't played 20 minutes in a long time, but then again, Bledsoe has played every game pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. If you want something, again, on a 2-game slate that maybe can do something, again, that one just kind of hit me just a couple of minutes ago. I don't know.
I certainly understand it. I think this is a different situation we're dealing with, so I'll avoid it this time just because I don't trust him to get on the court and do anything. Right. I really don't in the playoffs. That regular season is one thing. This team now it's time to win. Like, these minutes projections for Milwaukee can be completely – I can make an argument you might see 40 minutes out of Middleton tonight. You might see 40 minutes out of Giannis tonight.
Well, I'm kind of expecting 40 minutes out of Middleton tonight.
And by the way, I would put Middleton as the guy who might play the most minutes ahead of Giannis. He tends to do that quite a bit. So I'm starting to talk myself even more and more into this Middleton thing.
It's not a bad idea.
I think it's just right. It's the right tournament play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like any other time. If we just eliminated this past 10 days or whatever, let's eliminate the bubble and we pick up right here. It's the first games, round 2, Miami and Milwaukee. Chris Middleton would be 35 to 50% owned in this spot. I really believe that. I think he'd be owned more than Jimmy Butler would be by a lot. So I'm into that play, and I think that's where we go. We did get a couple questions in here. I'm going to get to the OKC game in a minute. Thanks for asking, Rated R Superstar. Guys, again, want to remind you, really ask all the questions you want. We'll get to everything. Just make sure you get them in. We've got, it may not be that many people on YouTube, but we've got this stuff going on Periscope. We've got it going on Facebook. It's all over the place. So we're getting questions from everywhere, and we're going to try and get to all of them. I don't think that should be any kind of a problem. But the question about the OKC guards, any groups, is a really good question. And I think the answer for this particular slate is no, but we'll get into the specific plays. It's going to be, they're going to need all of the stuff out of everyone. This is a must-win time. It's totally, the gloves are off, whatever. It's time. They're desperate. I have very strong takes on who's going to succeed for OKC and then one long shot play. But I want to start with Houston. And again, I want to mention Houston's a 5-point favorite in this game. What I would say is if Houston doesn't win this, if Houston wins this game by 5, if this game is within 5 points or less, Houston will lose this game. That part I feel extremely strong about. I do not like this situation if this game is close. We've seen Houston absolutely destroy OKC in every game this series, and yet there's still a game 6 being played because every time the game's close, OKC wins, and when Houston wins, they win by 25. So I don't think they're going to win by 25 today. I think if it's really close, like they could win a 7-point game, a 10-point, whatever. I'm just saying, like the record for OKC, they have the best record in the NBA in close games. They're the best team down the stretch. So I'm just throwing this out there. If you're going to make a bet on this one, well, I still like Houston to win the series and get there. I think that it's a little too much. And I think if you're going to bet OKC, I guess my point is instead of taking the points, take the extra odds and bet on them straight out to win. If you're going to bet them, that's what I'm saying.
I want to be a little devil's advocate for that.
Let's do it.
Just because, like, when I see statistics like the one that I've seen literally every time Oklahoma City's played, that they're 30-15 or whatever they were in games that are 5 points or less or something like that. Mm-hmm. You could honestly analyze that one of two ways because it really does depend on who their opponent is, right? So one way you could say is they're really, really good down the stretch. Another way you could say it is that teams they're supposed to beat by like 12 points, they just let them freaking hang around and they can't close them out.
No, they were the number 1 team in the NBA this year against the spread.
Okay.
They're strange. They've been underdogs way more than they should have been, basically, according to the NBA schedule. Remember, at one point, Cheeks, they covered, I think it was 14 straight road games. They covered. Oh, really? Yeah, something absurd like that. I mean, this is they were just playing everybody tough. But this is the regular season, and we've seen that Houston can just demolish people. So I was just saying that just from a game theory, like, just if you're going to make the bet and give up the 5 points just to win 50, double your money, why not win, why not add an extra 100% and just bet them to win outright? Because I think that's the way it plays more likely. That's my personal take.
So tell me your take. I mean, you said you had a pretty strong take on the Houston game. Tell me what it is. Okay, so
it's the take is on the guys who I like on the OKC side mostly. Well, on the Houston side, I'm having a really hard time, especially with the questionable Westbrook. Like, first of all, if the game's was really close in the last one and it was really that much in doubt the whole way, I think you would have just seen Westbrook stay on the court in the second half a lot more. I didn't entirely buy the 25 to 28 minutes thing, but I know that's what they were going into it thinking, which just makes him less interesting. And honestly, he's going to get a little bit of ownership today. It's not like you're going to get the 0% owned Westbrook on a nothing slate. You're going to get, he's still going to be low owned, but he's going to be closer to 15 or 25. I mean, I guess you could make an argument for playing Harden, of course. The most obvious guy, the sad part is that he's going to be so chalky is Robert Covington. And the problem with him is that I don't know if many people realize this. It took an incredible hot streak, and that's sort of what happens with Houston players anyway. But this guy had like 2 fantasy points at halftime in the last game. He scored 41 in the second half. A lot of those were meaningless minutes, and he did make 6 out of 11 threes, which he hasn't done, I don't think, since he got to – he did it one other time since he got to Houston. So that's a lot to count on for a guy to be that chalky. Having said that, I don't know how not to – he is the one guy who I feel like I need to get exposure to on this side. But it feels like maybe there's maybe we do pivot away from him. Maybe it's not just playing him or Jeff Green. Maybe it's skipping those guys and just playing PJ Tucker.
Well, on FanDuel, again, I was thinking of something along the lines of just playing maybe Bam and Jeff and Green. You know what I mean? I think this Covington Green thing that people just kind of like flip flop based on the last game or something like that. And I mean, I don't think Covington's a lock. None of the secondary guys on Houston are ever a lock. They just aren't.
No.
So yeah, the only guy I think I promise you, like you said, is that PJ Tucker's playing 44 billion minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or until he fouls out.
And he gets 3 fouls in the first 6 minutes. They leave him in. You know what I mean?
Here's what I wanted to know. I've been looking at projections all year long for basketball, obviously. PJ Tucker, I don't think has had a projection ever less than 38 minutes. And for some reason, he's projected to play 34 minutes tonight. So every single thing you see on PJ Tucker, bump it up 5 minutes. Right. There is no way in the world, without fouling out, that he plays less than 40 minutes. No way. Unless he's in horrible foul trouble, obviously. That's the only way.
Can you play a brutally expensive PJ Tucker on DraftKings? Not PJ Tucker. Eric Gordon on DraftKings.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you could. I don't think it's. I think that if you, it's fine.
It's impossible, right?
I mean, it's hard to. It's if you fade Giannis and Harden, I guess you could. Yeah, you could. I think there's other guys. There's another guy I like on the other side who's going to seem gross. But I'll talk about it when we get there in a second.
Okay, I don't know who anybody seems gross in a 2-game slate. I like all these guys in Oklahoma City. I just don't know which one.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, partly here's the problem with that guy who seems gross now, because I just now got the ownership part of it. There's 2 guys I love, and fortunately one of them is going to be low owned. The one who I thought was going to be low owned initially, I guess it's the small forward, power forward eligibility thing, was Gallinari, just because of the recency bias. And honestly, he got kind of played off the court in a couple games in this series, which has been – and again, he's a guy who was absolutely torched this Houston team. He did it after they did it in the regular season. He just has struggled in this series since after the first game. So I'm struggling a little bit where I stand on him, but I do think that the upside is enough there where I would play him over a guy like Eric Gordon for sure. But again, he's going to be more popular too. I think the really balls out play is just let's just play Dennis Schroeder everywhere. I don't see any reason not to. The guy was about to absolutely demolish he was the only guy who came to play for OKC in the last game. He was going to demolish his fantasy point total, but him and PJ Tucker got kicked out at the same time. Another lucky day for Bobby, who rested both of them, and they were both crushing at the time, but on pace for 7x. I love Schroeder. I love him better when a guy like Westbrook's on the other side. I like his mentality lately. I think that he won't have to guard Harden anymore. He doesn't have to guard Harden anymore, so you can see his production after the first game he guarded Harden. Then Dort comes back. Look at the production for Dennis Schroeder since then. Not to mention that with Westbrook in the game is going to play faster and probably have more openings at transition for OKC than they've had so far. And that's just screams Schroeder to me. I also think in a funny way, he's like their most reliable offensive player. Like he's actually the guy who would scare me to guard him more than Chris Paul or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at this point. Chris Paul for 3-minute stretches, sure. But overall, throughout the course of the game, Schroeder, I just feel like he's a phenomenal tournament player. I don't think he's going to be high owned, especially on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like him. I think Shai's going to be really, really popular.
Yeah.
They're going to project him for 40 minutes, right? So he's going to be pretty popular. I think that
for a guy who took 8 shots in a game that was like a must-win.
So let's talk. There are 3 guys I want to talk about in this game. One is what do you do with Dort?
Yeah, so that's I think he's the better value than the other guy just because the minutes are so secure. So that's just where I would weigh.
Yeah, but are his minutes secure? They took a lot of heat for all the shots that he took.
That's stupid media stuff. Like, what's he supposed to do?
Well, it's stupid media stuff, but I mean, I don't know.
He'll play every minute until he fouls out of the game.
Okay.
Right? Why would you change it? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, Harden against him is shooting like even after the last game where Harden was lighting him up, he's still shooting 28% against him.
And you don't even need him to shoot anyway. He can take.
He has to shoot. That's the thing. That's why everybody's wrong in my opinion. You can't have a guy wide open from 3 just not shooting. It's not like he's going to go 0 for 9 every time. He shot 9 in the last game. Before that, he just made 3 of them. That's why nobody talked about it.
And are we giving up on Nerlens Noel, or are we going to give him a shot again?
I think it's very high variance. It's probably worth it. I would expect him to potentially do something different. And I would also want to have some late flexibility to see if I could maybe change my lineups up a little bit. It's going to be hard to do on a 2-game slate, but it's something that I would try. And at the same time, what's weird is that Steven Adams, while I thought might get played out of the series, this kind of happened. Now at 0 ownership, take Steven Adams at 1/3 the ownership at $500 more than Brook Lopez. It's probably a better play, right, for GPPs, I would think.
Well, on FanDuel, I have them at. I can't really separate the 2 of them on FanDuel. So if that's the case, maybe I should play all of Steven Adams on FanDuel. No?
Well, no, and then if that's the case, then it shouldn't really matter, like because technically Brook Lopez should be better on. Well, actually, no, the 3-point shot, but he also does get block shots, so it's kind of hard to know. It sort of goes both ways. But I mean, look, I don't love Gallinari and Adams have had really things that would make you kind of sick if you watch the series, but at low ownership for Adams, especially for Adams. And then with Gallinari's case, I think that there's a pretty good floor and ceiling. I think it's been fluky games. I really do.
This is a take I have on this game, right? So again, we're talking about a 2-game slate and whatever, probably not going to work. So that's what you got to do on 2-game slates. Sometimes things that aren't going to work. So if you didn't like my Dante DiVincenzo no-shot take over there, I got even this was a little more logical, I think. You know what I mean? Houston is a 5.5-point favorite. And if I have 2 plays that are probably kind of bad plays if the game stays close, but maybe like almost nut plays if the game doesn't stay close. And so I'm interested on the Houston side in Austin Rivers. And on the OKC side, I am interested in Darius Baisley. If the game stays close, he's just not quite ready to get those playoff minutes, right? But the minutes he gets, he might just do kind of just, on the bad side of okay. But if this game does, finish somehow, he's going to be the one in there just racking up fantasy points. So, again, 2-game slate. I think Austin Rivers and Darius Baisley would be the guys I would play for kind of like that mix of kind of shitty play if the game stays close, but not the worst in the world, and probably pretty good plays if the game doesn't.
Yeah, I can see both paths. I don't know. I think that the only thing I would say is that it would have to be some sort of a special blowout in a game 6 and a closeout game to get off the court. But it's possible, with the way Houston plays. So maybe that's not the worst idea in the world. Actually, I think Baisley has a little bit more of my interest because, what if it's 16-0 in Houston and you got 2 fouls on Shea or something, like all of a sudden, or even Adams too. Like all of a sudden, OKC just might pivot and play a little differently. They should be. To be honest, Houston's dominated them in this series. And this is going back to the Billy Donovan thing. I think he's done a terrible job in this particular series. I've always been frustrated by him because I've always been an OKC guy. And I think that I just feel like he's not making any adjustments in this series. And I think that, I don't know, but I'm still waiting for it. Like I'm still ready for the Nerlens Noel to play 26 minutes or something like that to happen. And it just hasn't happened yet. And if I was him, I would probably have tried that by now. So I can't know. I don't know. But overall, I think Houston – I do think it's a really good chance that Houston closes out even. I just think if you're going to – what I wanted to just reiterate is that if you're going to bet OKC to cover the spread, bet them to win. That's all I was saying. And then Jeff had asked before if we think Bledsoe plays. I really don't know. I don't have a good feel for this one, and the reporting from the bubble has been really tough. So we'll know before live.
I really, really hope that they announce it before freaking 6:30.
Yeah, they better. They better. That's all I can say. If we find out at 6:35, if he's announced like starting and then they say, oh, he's late scratch, I'm just going to
so mad.
It's too many times, man. It's too many times. All right.
Well, what do you – oh, by the way, I still didn't ask you. I guess I did. So, like, on FanDuel, how bad is it? I mean, I know you're going to say it's not optimal, but how bad is it if Bledsoe plays to have a lineup with both Bledsoe and George Hill? Can it ever win or no?
I think it can. I know exactly what you're doing. I know. I can see the rest of that build.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's going to be tough, but at the same time, of course it can, because Westbrook could be limited by minutes. Chris Paul hasn't been that productive. Which, by the way, we didn't talk about Chris Paul, and there's just some part of me that feels like, God, in a must-win game, don't we think Chris Paul maybe takes a little bit more aggressive? I know it's not his style, but what if you need him to? So he might be a little more aggressive. And by the way, it's not Shea's nature either. That's why I like Schroeder. Schroeder is I'm going to try and shoot it every time until you tell me to stop, until you make me stop. I don't know, man. I personally think you probably need to play one of Paul, Westbrook, or Dragic.
Yeah,
probably. But I don't. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the worst thing. I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but I don't think I would do it. All right. And it's real quick to reiterate, I think I'm going to do this Middleton thing on DraftKings. And it's weird because, what's funny about all this stuff? Whenever there's a guy who's going to be high owned on one side and not on the other side, and it's a basketball game and it's fluid, they can make the shots or whatever, or even baseball too, it doesn't really matter all that much with the pricing. It really doesn't for a guy like Middleton. He has it going. He puts up 45 fantasy points. You're going to be fine with that at 7,900 because your build is already completely different. You can live with that with those 5.5 X's, even with Giannis and Harden doing the same thing, just because you don't have to pay down for these floor guys who are just it's really grim at the bottom here. I feel like it's really, really tough on the value. And we got to ask a question that I did answer in chat, but I personally Kelly Olynyk is a long shot tournament play. I can't quite get to, but absolutely I could see him winning somebody this kind of slate. You know,
what happens if Bam is put on what's his face and he gets 3 fouls or something?
Yeah, that's that. I mean, I don't know that they need him. Like, I don't really know what he offers to them. To be honest, like, I just see that as more of a spot where they can go small and play Crowder and Iguodala. That's who will guard. That's the other guys who are going to guard him. It's going to be Crowder and Iguodala. You know what I mean? They just have a lot of these wingy, switchable pieces, and
right.
Kelly Olynyk is not that. Bam is like one of those guys too. Bam is like a wing player basically. He just happens to be a center. It's amazing.
Who do you like more on? This is interesting. So on FanDuel, at center, we talked about Lopez and Adams. Are you gonna go like your standard PJ Tucker play over there?
Yeah, I ended up with PJ Tucker in my first builds on FanDuel.
Yeah,
I think I might. You know, I'm really thinking about taking a stand on this in DraftKings and just saying I'm not going to play either Giannis or Harden or Westbrook. And honestly, that's the one who worries me a little bit because I am the Westbrook guy. Like, I am the guy who would want to play him normally. Like, and I think there's an excellent chance he has a good game here. I just his price makes it really tricky, and if I'm gonna, it's hard not to justify spending $1,600 more for Harden, especially with the minutes concerned.
You know what I'm finding? I'm just like literally eyeballing my FanDuel lineups. It looks as though like the lineups with both Harden and Giannis are just not going to do it. And it really looks like the ones with neither of them are not going to do it either. I think that the ones that are going to win are the ones with one of them, I think. I don't know.
Maybe. That's what everyone else is going to think, in my opinion, too.
Now, again, like I'm just going to just throw names out here, right?
So we're so funny because this is exactly what we do. Like, to me, I had that exact – to me, that's the exact – I had the thought that that's the way people will think. But my whole thing is, okay, only play them together or play them apart. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So now what I'm looking at is now I got this lineup here with Westbrook and Paul at point guard, right? And then I got Schroeder and Middleton at shooting guard. Then I have Crowder and Gallinari at small forward, Bam and Covington at power forward, and Brook Lopez at center. And I like every freaking play. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know, I don't have Harden. I don't have Giannis. So what? You know, do whatever.
Yeah, so what if they even score 70? The build can win you the slates. This has happened many, many times before. I've told people this. Harden has had 90 fantasy point games and not been on the winning lineups before.
Right.
It can happen, man. It does happen. Anyway, so I just want to say, so OOJL, which I appreciate the questions. I also appreciate the comment about Billy Donovan. I agree. But his question about who guards Giannis start the game, if Bam guards and who guards Lopez, it doesn't matter. Brook Lopez is not a person who's going to beat you up in the post. No one. It doesn't matter. Put anybody on him. I mean, it'll probably be Crowder, or Crowder will switch with Bam, and Bam will probably start because they probably want Bam offensively. They'll probably start with Bam sort of, 30% of the time on Giannis and maybe the rest on Lopez or something. But it really doesn't matter. Brook Lopez is not really a threat for any of that stuff. So it's not like you need to worry about size or anything like that because of Lopez. He doesn't rebound anyway. I'm really feeling I'm into this slate more than I thought I was, just because this build is going to work, or it could work. Let me just put it that way. I think it's got a chance of working. Sheet, you ready to get over to baseball, because we've taken a lot of time, but it's a good slate, and I want to emphasize again. I like Miami in this. I think Miami as a 5.5 point underdog in this game or whatever. I would have taken Miami at anything. I would probably bet them to win the game, and I wouldn't bet the Houston OKC game. But if I did bet OKC, I would bet them to win straight out. That's just what I wanted to say. I can't give away the BetQL great information. Again, you guys can join using the code BobbyFi, and these guys just absolutely crush it with their straight up bets. So listen to them on that. Listen to me and Sheets about DFS. All right, let's move over to baseball. Sheets, are we ready for it?
Yeah, we just got news that not a big deal. Victor Robles is out.
Oh, for you that sucks.
What do you mean? For me, that sucks.
Man, fading Giannis just feels so dumb and it's so wrong. But you have to kind of do something different today. I mean, I'm telling you, he's gonna have a game. Like, it's not like I don't think he's gonna score 60 fantasy points. I don't know. It feels crazy, but I think it's the right way to play. So I'm sticking to it. All right, I'm ready to move on to baseball if you are.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Guys, if there's any more questions about basketball, fire them in anytime. We're happy to answer them. We want to keep this stuff going. And also enter any QQs, baseball thoughts, anything. We're going to start it off going game by game. We're going to make it a little bit fast because we've done a baseball video. But also, I don't generally like to bet straight baseball games very often. There's occasionally a time where I think there's something that's being missed. A better pitcher than maybe is getting credit. I mentioned, I think we had that argument with think it was the Diamondbacks game with Marquis pitching, which he actually pitched pretty well in that game. So starting it off, you have Philly, and basically, what is the total of this one? Is that 10.5? Yeah, it is 10.5. Philly, Washington. This is a great spot. We have a little bit of weather concerns.
Do you?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's early, you know what I mean? But everything makes me nervous like it used to before I understood the weather. Now it doesn't matter because they just can randomly cancel without having to worry about the fans thing. That's getting worse, actually. It was yellow earlier in the day. Now it's got Roth has a yellow-orange. Little shout out to Roth from Roto Grinders, the best weatherman in the business, even though we got one day wrong. It can't be his fault. It's weird times.
Orange now?
It's yellow-orange. So it's not as bad. But the other game was green and it rained out, so – we got it looks like they play through some spotty drizzle, but there's some nasty stuff upstream right now. Probably gonna have to wait to go. So let's just think about it right now. I love Phillies especially. I don't like Washington quite as much because their top players are so expensive. It's hard to fit them into a stack. But the Phillies are definitely one of the top spots on the board to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was working on. I thought I had something like a real good build on freaking FanDuel using Atlanta, but Acuña's out. I don't know if I want to stack them without him in the lineup. So anyway, I'm sorry. Back to Washington, Philly. These are two of the teams that I really, really like. I like them in a game stack. I like them in whatever. And yeah, I totally agree with you that the Washington guys are kind of difficult to get to, which makes it hard. But Philly, I like McCutchen, especially on FanDuel. It looks really, really good. Didi, I guess, on DraftKings, both sites, I suppose. And then Hoskins is good. Harper, the usual guys. I'm not getting to Real Muto. Is that going to come back and get me?
No, I mean, that's what everybody's going to run into on this slate. It feels pretty obvious how the build's going to go. I do think that people are going to play him, but I don't think he's going to get played as much as the other guys are. Certainly not as much as Reese or McCutchen. That would be my take. But I'm with you. I mean, and look, the thing is, these guys are going to have more ownership than I probably really want. The weather maybe helps that a little bit, maybe gives you a little bit of a chance. Also, one guy we didn't talk about who is in the lineup now is Jay Bruce. 2.8K. It's always hard. Feels like every time Jay Bruce plays, he has like a home run and 2 doubles, doesn't it? Like every time the Philly stack busts, but Jay Bruce has 5 RBIs and he's the only guy out of the 7-hole who always does it. I don't know. I feel like that happens when I play them. I have actually a take on the betting in this game. I do think you should bet on Philly to win this game. I don't. Whatever it's whatever you're laying, it's not. It doesn't matter. This is just. I just don't see how Eric Fetty can get through any innings with. I understand he's a ground ball pitcher. He has no strikeout ability against a team that's one of their weaknesses. There is just no way I don't see him getting beaten all over the field tonight. What's up, Harry? I see Harry on Facebook. He says Bobby and Sheets. We got a little fist bump from him. I don't know. So I love Philly, but I'm a little annoyed by how high owned they're going to be. Let's talk about Washington because it's really tempting, but how do we play these really expensive bats?
I wasn't going to play them.
But then I don't want to stack them. Then I feel like I don't like these other guys.
Yeah, you don't like Eaton. You don't like Turner.
If Eaton was 2.6, I would like him. Yeah. He's even been fine, but he's been way, way better. But he just, I don't know, the power is just so non-existent for him these days, and I don't know. It just doesn't feel good to me. It's fine, but there's better, cheaper outfielders.
So.
Howie Kendrick, to use your first base spot on him feels a little bit weird for a guy who's not really a traditional power hitter, but he is 3,900, and that's reasonable. But he's going to be really popular.
Yeah, definitely on DraftKings, they're looking much less.
Yeah, I would say if you do play them, I think you actually have to play Soto. I really feel like that. Like I don't feel like they make any sense otherwise because Soto is the only low-owned guy in this group, probably. Well, no, actually, it's not true.
What about Thames with 2,300 on FanDuel?
Actually, yeah, it makes a lot of sense on FanDuel. He's always really popular. Whenever for the last 2 years, I don't think anybody's been more popular on FanDuel. Yeah, there's nobody who's had less production than Eric Thames.
This isn't going to work. You're right.
I just feel like for me, the more I look at it, the more I'm just sort of out on it. Also, I don't think Howard is necessarily going to be terrible. It's going to be more of a bullpenny thing. I just am not really I don't know. For me, I just think there's better spots.
Yeah, it's going to end up with probably with Milwaukee after all this. Okay.
Oddly enough, though, the best play on their team is going to be like the lowest owned or one of the lowest owned, which is really weird because I do like Soto. I just can't get him in because I want to play him pitching. We have the game where I like both pitchers, but I'm probably only realistically using one on this slate. New York and Tampa Bay. Slight little bit of drizzling going on. Apparently, you're in the area. You can tell us what's going on. What's it like?
I have no windows in my office. So
oh my God, I would lose my mind with no windows.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about it. So Garrett Cole, I have him as the number one now. We have weather concerns, by the way, in the KC game also a little bit. So I want to. It's not that I have him so far ahead. I just think that the game looks safer, and I love both of them. I love he and Bieber, but I think that he's the guy I'm a little bit more prioritizing.
I have Cole on every lineup on FanDuel.
Okay. That's awesome. He actually, as of this moment, I can safely say that I did too. I think that I was really excited about a low-owned Glasnow in a sneaky spot, good spot, and now he's going to be so chalky. And one thing
why is Glasnow going to be so chalky?
He's 8,400. This guy should be 10K. This guy is not. I mean, well, Garrett Cole shouldn't be 10K. That's ridiculous anyway.
Garrett Cole, all these other guys. Why do you need Glasnow? You know what I mean? I don't know.
He's 8,400.
Okay.
The Yankees strike out. He put up more fantasy points in his last game than Garrett Cole has in any game this season. These are all, he's a strikeout, high risk, high reward pitcher. I mean, I don't even know if the risk is so high anymore. He can get a little bit wild from time to time. He gives up a few bombs here and there, but he's a good.
Now I got to go play the freaking Yankees. This is ridiculous.
He's not like mega chalk. I see him here. I see people talking him up, and I see his percentage projected pretty high on a couple different sites, and I kind of agree with it when I look at this slate because people, as much as we might just say, okay, we're just going to pay up both spots, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, other people are going to try and find that way of spending down. I'm not going to, to me, 1,700 for a hitter versus 1,700 for a pitcher is a big difference. And I will just take Cole over a guy like him. But if he was going to be really low owned tonight, I would be all over it. And honestly, I will enter one lineup on FanDuel with him as my SP.
Okay.
Just because I think that, you're going to get 1% ownership. And this is what I used to do. He reminds me of? It reminds me of the old, although Charlie Morton pitches deeper into games. But it was the old Charlie Morton thing. It seemed like every time Charlie Morton pitched, it was always against Cole or Verlander or somebody like that. And everybody had all the ownership. He'd always be 5%. He'd put up 35 points and you could win a tournament with him at no ownership. You know what I mean? Whereas the other guys would put up a similar score, but they were more expensive and everybody had them. And that's where I feel like Glasnow just has a huge ceiling with strikeouts. And this is not the same Yankee lineup that was there a few weeks ago. So that's where I'm at. You ready for the next one?
Yeah. What's next? Atlanta-Boston?
Atlanta-Boston.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm probably going to get roped into this. I'm probably going to play Atlanta anyway, even without Acuna. I'm looking at FanDuel right now specifically, but we can talk about DraftKings in a second. I mean, we got Markakis and Riley at the 4-5 at 2,600 and 2,400, and Ozuna at 3,200 in the 3. Looks pretty freaking tasty to me. You know what I mean? I don't know. And then I can play Freeman if you want. Instead of Acuna, if you want to play, I'm going to say overpriced, but play more of a power type guy. And Riley, so what is it? Riley, Ozuna, Markakis, Freeman? I don't know. I mean, maybe with Acuna out, makes it a little less owned, I suppose. But Boston sucks, man. Their pitching stinks. Their bullpen stinks. I think I'm still on this.
We have every show we talk about baseball at all. She has to drop at least one Boston sucks reference in there, and I'm totally on board with it now. A few years back, I used to root for Boston a little bit against those Yankees, but they've just become the most insufferable fan base on the world. I'm sorry to say that, and I loved a lot of you guys. By the way, a lot of them are like my favorite sports people, like Bill Simmons. I love, even though these guys drive me crazy. I do want to just remind you real quick before I jump into my take on the Atlanta-Boston game. Please, guys, like and subscribe. I know most of you guys aren't watching on YouTube, but the ones of you that are, please like and then please subscribe to the Road to QL. We're going to be doing these shows every day, 4:30 Eastern time. And also, again, if you want the BetQL, the premium information, just use BobbyFi code for 20% off of everything you go on. And by the way, I'm telling you, you'll feel good about it shortly after getting it done. All right, let's jump into it. For me, Atlanta, it's really hard not to have interest in these guys for me, but I also think the pricing on DraftKings, there are other ways I'd rather spend up. And the problem is the cheap guys who are going to play are going to be very chalky from here. So I'm struggling with it because I really like Austin Riley. I really like Marcell Ozuna, Freddie Freeman. I don't think I necessarily need Dansby Swanson, but I'm okay with him. I just think he's going to have more ownership than he should at that price. And they didn't do the thing and start the expensive catcher that I wanted, because I wanted to play d'Arnaud as a pivot off of Hoskins and play him with a Philly stack. But I can't do that anymore. So it's Ozuna, Freeman, Duvall, Riley, Camargo are the most interesting to me. I don't feel great about them, but those are my four that I would. And look, I'm sorry, did I say Ozuna in there? Yeah, Ozuna.
You like Markakis?
Never.
Really interesting.
He hit he hits 1 or 2 home runs every 700 at bats. I have never seen anybody with less power in my life. And every time I say this, every time someone asks me if I like Markakis, it's happened in the sheets every time. All of those home runs happen on those days, I promise. Every show we did on Roto Grinders became a running joke, because I would say we'd all joke about how you can't play Markakis, obviously, because he's got like a 75 ISO. And then he'd go out and hit a couple bombs or something, or he has 2 home runs of the year. One of the times he hadn't hit a home run in a year and a half, and I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Whatever. Didi over Swanson every time. For John Diaz, for me, that's the answer. Now, the weather might make people look a little the other way. I certainly like Swanson okay, but I prefer Didi, so I'm with you on this one. But yeah, I mean, so the Atlanta looks better on paper than they do on paper. No, they look better in the concept of them is better than the actual who they actually have they're running out there tonight. In fact, their run total has dropped by almost like half a run since this morning. That's
interesting.
So the Acuna thing definitely affected some people. I think even how weak the rest of this lineup is. I mean, Markakis is batting 4th in this lineup. That's crazy. I know he used to do that for some. I don't know. This is a weird lineup. I think you want the Riley Duvall guys a ton, and just huge power for the price. The problem is that we won't be the only ones thinking that way. And you're not playing anybody from Boston. I'm just going to repeat the same thing I repeated on our show earlier, Sheets. Not you. I mean, I hope nobody else out there is. If you were ever going to play a lefty, you can always play JD Martinez against a lefty. The problem is Max Fried just doesn't give up anything to anyone. He doesn't give up home runs. I don't know how you're going to make any money. And by the way, we don't even have him in the lineup today. By the way, I wish that Max Fried was a reasonable price, because he doesn't strike anybody out, but I would be absolutely playing Max Fried tonight if I could get him a little bit like at 7,200 or something. You can play that Bobby Dalbec kid because his name is Bobby, and we have to stand together. There's not very many of us that are grown. But he's pretty much the only guy I would consider from Boston. It's only because he's the flat 2K and he's going to bat 6th.
I like that.
So Dalbec, Bobby D. I have to play. Look, if there's a guy named Bobby, there's not that many grown guys named Bobby. You got to play the Bobbies when they're around. That's what I say. And the fact that they don't even know what my name is at Starbucks, because Bobby is not a name a grown man should have. So we got to support each other. All right, let's. You ready to move over to Pittsburgh and Milwaukee?
Yeah, I like Milwaukee on FanDuel a lot. And I guess on DraftKings too. I like. You know what? I like Narvaez and Smoke, and then FanDuel you could play Cura also and Yelich. I think I like them a lot actually over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here has become one of the best hitters in baseball. You can't play, in my opinion, the Pittsburgh stack is no good. The only guy I really want on DraftKings is Eric Gonzalez. Jose Osuna, for a guy who's hit 1 home run in his last 200 at bats to be double-digit owned, I don't care what his price is. It feels stupid to me, and I don't want to be stupid. So I'm not going to play these guys. If I was going to play, they're all fine as one-offs because they're priced. Actually, I mean, Josh Bell is it's kind of silly at that price. So Josh Bell and Eric Gonzalez, those are the 2 guys you can play, in my opinion, from Pittsburgh. If you look at Pittsburgh's run total, they have one of the lowest run totals in the slate, by the way. They have a lower run total than some of these other superstar pitchers are facing up against. So it's the combination of Suter for a couple innings, who's going to be fine, and then you've got a good bullpen behind him. With how poor this lineup is, I think you've got to have interest in these. I think you can't really have too much interest in the full stack, but I do like the individual plays, and I agree with you. Sorry, go ahead.
Be careful if you multi-enter and you let an optimizer build your lineup and you play a lot of them. Beware I like to call the Lewis Brinson theory, the Lewis Brinson effect. I mean, if you don't use a little common sense and figure out who you want to play, you end up with a whole just shitload of Jose Osuna, for example, and just a whole bunch of Lewis Brinson and a whole bunch of 2K guys that the optimizer will give you, because on a point per dollar basis, they just fill in like so much of the rest of your lineup, but they just never win anything. You know.
Did I ever tell you what I? It's funny because it applies to Brinson and Tyler Glass now. So I have to tell you a really quick story. I had Tyler Glass as my starting pitcher, and I thought I had the greatest deal in the world. I thought he was, he goes out there and he gives up 9 runs and records 1 out. So I think he had negative 20-something on FanDuel.
Okay.
And my stack goes completely nuts. The equivalent of 2 home runs for all the 4 guys in my main stack. So I've got a little bit of room left. I got 1 player left. My 1 player left is Mike Trout, though. And I go, okay, well, I can't, I'm going to take Mike Trout out because obviously he was actually going to be really popular that night because you could afford him. So I'm going to take Mike Trout out, and I'm going to put in the guy who's going to be the least owned. There was only 2 games left. So I put in Lewis Brinson. And Lewis Brinson hit 3 home runs that night.
What?
And I finished 4th in a tournament with a pitcher on a FanDuel tournament. This was a $2,500 buy-in where first place was $250K. I finished 4th place. Maybe it was 5th place with Tyler Glass now as my starting pitcher with negative 20 odd fantasy points. But Lewis Brinson hit 3 home runs in 1 game. That's what it took. And it took a Mike Trout to Lewis Brinson specific swap because there was like 4 outfielders left, 4 outfield eligible players. I just said, give me the lowest owned one. I'll take Lewis Brinson. He was a top prospect once. Let's go. And the one
That's
anyway,
awesome.
Sorry to tell that quick story, but we're going to get out of here in just a few minutes. But I do a quick question from John Diaz, favorite spend down pitcher.
Well, I got time. What's
All right. Well, I'm always, it's your time. You're a busy guy, and I've got to be sensitive to it. All right. So, favorite spend down at pitcher. I don't like any. The closest thing to a spend down that I like is Tyler Glass now. That if we come up with anybody else?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we don't have anybody else, right?
Yeah, we do.
Who?
Yeah, Herman Marquez.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay, well, we'll get into that later. I don't have the same take on that Cheeks does. But
you don't want to play?
I thought Milwaukee was going to be chalky because everybody loves to pick on Trevor Williams. And honestly, outside of like 2 or 3 spots, I don't think they will be. Narvaez is going to be the chalk catcher. I'm wondering if how much of that'll it might be smart just to switch over to Stallings. Like they're basically the same price, and you might get like 3 times or 4 times as much ownership on Narvaez, maybe even higher. If you're just going to play him as a one-off or even like I don't know. I think you could play Jacob Stallings for Pittsburgh. He's the other guy. All of a sudden now I have a Pittsburgh 3-man stack that I like, which is Josh Bell, Gonzalez, and the catcher Stallings. But I don't like all of them together. I just want to play like they're just fillers. As a stack, this is a good stack, and Justin Smoke is not going to be too high owned, and he's nice and cheap. Nobody's going to play Luis Arias, who's leading off for a team with a 5.5 run or 5.3 run total. No one's going to play Keston Hiura because his price. And Christian Yelich is always fantastic. And then Ben Gamble is 2.3K and outfield eligible. Jace Peterson is 2K and outfield eligible, and somehow is projected to have higher ownership than Ben Gamble. I'll side with Ben Gamble on that one. He's just a much better hitter, and neither are good. But Gamble gives you some upside at least. Eric Sogard is 2.8. He's batting 9th, but they have a lot of ways you can use guys in these stacks, and I think maybe you can try and if you make a 5-man, you could play Smoke, Narvaez, one of Gamble and Peterson, and Yelich and Hiura. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I just don't love picking on Trevor Williams. I do like trying to get a few home runs off of him or a home runner here and there. So I'm mostly going to side with even the chalky guys here because I just don't think he blows up quite enough for me to go against him here. But it's definitely possible. I mean, the White Sox just did it to him. Other than that, he's been pretty good most of the year. He probably will give up a home run or 2. But I don't know. I talked a lot about this game, and I still feel like I'm iffy on where I stand on it.
What's the next game that we have?
Cleveland and KC.
Yeah, because that's like my new kind of sneaky game on FanDuel. Actually, I'm playing one lineup of substance with the 4 Cleveland guys I usually play. I'm going to be playing Lindor, Ramirez, Reyes, and the value guy and the Naquin.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I actually think it's an interesting idea to get a little bit different because you're sort of getting similarly like 10 to 20 ownerships, 20% ownerships on everybody else. So this would be the team that you could pivot. And you did mention that you sort of put it together while we were on air earlier in a way that actually made sense to me. Jose Ramirez is clearly the best play here just because of these, look, this guy, if he gets on base, he's going to run for you. He's got the pop. He's got everything you'd want in a guy who's a DFS target for GPPs. And he's going to be low owned and everyone's going to play Arenado over him and all of this stuff. So I'm totally with you on Lindor especially. I also think Franmil Reyes is phenomenal play. Like, what a great tournament play at 4.1. You have all these other guys. It's going to leave him at like 1% owned, and he's probably got as good a power spot as those other guys do. So I'm kind of with you a little bit here, Sheets. I don't think Keller's like terrible, but why couldn't, maybe a little 3 or 4 man for me. I don't know about the full thing, but I kind of like it.
Well, on FanDuel, I'm just going to be a 4 man. I mean,
FanDuel, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but even DraftKings, like you could do it. Like you could play the cheap Freeman and Naquin with the expensive Ramirez and Lindor, or Reyes, or instead of one of Lindor or Ramirez, play Reyes instead. Use one of the other spots for your Rocky if you want to. I like that a little bit actually. I'm starting to get to be more behind this, and also, not that that it should entirely, but the run total has jumped, so I'm on board a little bit. Shane Bieber is going to be the most popular pitcher, and by the way, this game has weather concerns too. It's just yellow. It's not on Roth's board, and I'm sorry to give away Roth's information. I mean, this is something he'll tell you anyway himself in a little bit, but look, man, we're going to have to assume as of right now that they're playing. Assuming they are, Shane Bieber's my second favorite pitcher on DraftKings and my second favorite pitcher on FanDuel. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm between. Actually, I make Cole a little bit better than Bieber on
FanDuel.
No, I make him a little better than Bieber on DraftKings. I make him a lot better than him on FanDuel.
Yeah. Yeah. So the tricky part is, how do we pair them together? The answer is a lot of these really, really cheap guys that we've named, but not doing it foolishly with guys with no power just because they're batting in a good spot in the order. Really want to try and get your power upsides or your combinations with stacks. That's really important. So what I sort of thought was going to happen is going to happen, and I'm going to take us right into the next game because we're not going to play any KC hitters. The Chicago-Minnesota thing. So now we have a guy who's just pitched the 2 best games of the MLB season, including in his last game, who's going to be unowned against not the best version of Minnesota's lineup that we've ever seen. Still, it's fine, but, you got Jeffers and Cave in there, there's strikeouts in there, obviously Sano and all that. I thought I was going to have 0 and be playing some Twins mini stacks. I think I'm going to have a little bit of Giolito just because, man. Just in case, man. Why can't, what's his name, Garrett Cole go out there and give a 3-run homer in the first inning or something like that, and Giolito, I don't know, strikes out the first 9 guys at the game and we feel like idiots, because that's totally in the realm of possibility. We just saw it happen last week and 5-6 days ago. And now because it happened, no one's going to go the other way. And Minnesota is scary, but they haven't been the same, and they've been really struggling, actually. I don't know, man. I think it's probably worth getting a little Giolito action.
Well, it's like what I said when we did our other thing, is that he's going to be like even lower owned than his projections would indicate, because just the way the salaries are structured on DraftKings specifically, I mean, he's just right in that sandwich between Cole and Bieber, and I just don't know. I just think he's going to disappear, and I think that people will be nervous playing him off of like 115 pitch performance or however many pitches he pitched.
He only threw 101. It's probably
that 101?
It was only like 101. It was something. It was incredibly low, whatever it was.
Yeah, but I'm not going to get some on FanDuel, as I said. I'm playing all Cole on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I am going to get some of him. I mean, the way I'm going to be maybe I'm going to change my mind, but for right now, I have like mostly Cole and Bieber, but I'm filtering in some Giolito and, as I mentioned before, some Marquez. Yeah, I mean, the guy just can throw a freaking. He's got, as we've seen, 60-point fantasy upside every freaking game. So it's kind of hard not to think about using him. Yeah.
I think we have to have look, he should not be your primary pitcher. He's not as good today as the other guys are. But to play him in a tournament is a really good idea. It's a really, really good idea. All right, let's get to the hammer. San Diego, Colorado. You got a small favorite here for Colorado, which makes sense as opposed to it. And, the run totals come back to, it's no longer, what is it? What was it earlier today? 12.5, 13, and now it's at just 12. So it's come down a half run. All right, so you're 3% owned or 1% owned or whatever he's going to be, Herman Marquis with a great pitcher's umpire. Let's hear the pitch. I just gave you part of it, I guess.
No, that's. I mean, that's it. That's the pitch. I mean, he's 3%. I didn't really even think about the umpire. I just look to play him when I can play him at low ownership, and I know that he doesn't have the same strikeout rate that he had before, but just in the name of playing a guy who's put up good fantasy points before, and no one's going to play him. That's really all I have. He projects for me, honestly. Like if you looked at like my list here, among 1, 2, 3, just on point per dollar, like 8 guys, like all kind of similar. And the other guys that I have, like between like Rich Hill, Max Fried, Lauer, guys like that, I just don't think they have the same strikeout upside that he does. So that's where I'm going to go to him.
No, I can.
And not the least of which, the fact that San Diego people are going to play them gives you kind of instant leverage over those guys if in fact he does have a good game.
That's true. I'm not going to be playing the Padres tonight because I actually have a little bit of respect for Marquee. I can't afford them, and I'm trying to figure out the ownerships here. Let me grab my sheets because I do want to take a look at both of the. Yeah, some places have different ownerships, and what I'm finding is that the Padres ownership is just something I want no part of today. I'm happy just to skip it. You know what? Maybe it's not enough to do what I'm doing with all my other guys. I think that. Yeah, I'm telling you, I just think there's no way I'm going to play any of these guys today at these ownerships. Especially there's like weather concerns in Colorado, and it's the kind of like that's the place where like you never really know, you're never really out of the woods, but they usually try harder to get games in. I don't know what they're going to do entirely now because it's sort of been back and forth across the MLB lately. But on the other hand, I do have interest in the Rockies, and I think that they're the better side of this by a lot. I think you're facing a pitcher in Garrett Richards who loses his control every single outing, who just ends up leaving balls over the plate, and he's not pitching in Colorado usually. Garrett Richards has reasonable stuff and has been a good pitcher at times in the past. I don't feel like today is a day that I want any part of it. I love that you can get the cheap guys at the bottom who aren't going to be crazy high owned. You do a little Kemp Hilliard. 2.7K for Hilliard, 3K for Kemp. And to be honest, these are the better spend downs. And the weird part is that they're actually projected to be lower owned than the other spend downs. That can't be right, but maybe it is. And I see it a couple different places. It's a little weird to me. I know Matt Kemp is not the old Matt Kemp, but it's 3K in Colorado for a guy who, he just had a home run last game. I think he's not, what has he got, like 6 or something this year, 7 this year? Hilliard has power. Not very interested in Tapia myself, but I like Arenado, Blackman, and Story a ton, and Murphy. I just am trying to figure out how to combine them with other guys who are going to be low on enough. And what I'm trying to do is make them 3 or 4 man, 0 5-man Colorado stacks for me. I just think that's where it becomes really hard when you're just doing what everybody else does.
Yeah, I like I always like Murphy against the righty. So I do like him. I like Tapia a little bit. I like Hilliard, like you said, and maybe like you said, like just Blackman's just always the man.
Yeah. Tapia, the thing I can't play him is just he never hits a home run, never. And it's hard for me. I don't know. It's like I'm a nit like that. We got an interesting message here from Kanoa's dad. He said, we deserve more viewers. Keep it up, guys. If we build it, they will come. You know what? We do, and we will have them. This is being broadcast a lot of different places, so there's probably more than it seems like. But it's true. We do, and we'll be now that we have a firm time, we're going to be doing this as of right now at 4:30 Eastern every day. I'll be here at least. Sheets will join me whenever he can, and we're going to have a great time with it. So we will get more viewers, and I'm glad you are one of them, Kanoa's dad. Also a cool name if that really is your kid's name. All right. Sheets, what can we sum up with here at the end? And we'll do a quick home run call. We did it earlier, but we can just do, an overall, maybe just pick 2 favorite home run plays of the day. And
I got a new one from the new lineups.
All right, let's do it.
But overall, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a fish for never playing. I really almost never play the Colorado game. I asked you about this beforehand. I asked you when we first started doing baseball together. I said, when these guys go to play in Colorado, they price them up and they get ownership. And what is overdone? They become too pricey. They become too overowned. And from what I gather, I think that if you really ran a computer and played the Colorado and the anti-Colorado and the teams playing Colorado every single time, I just think you would lose money. I just do. And the other thing is, I have a little bit of respect.
Not in cash games. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I have a little more respect for the. I have a little bit of respect for the pitchers here. I actually have a little bit of more respect for Richards in this spot. I mean, he's not the worst. I just don't think he's literally the worst pitcher in the world. I'll just give you that. So with that said, I just don't think I'm getting to them. I think there are other options that that you can play, and that's just where I'm at.
All right. Well, we will then end this with we're going to give a couple of home run calls, and then we're going to give we can throw out if there's any off the board pitcher you're using. You mentioned the Marquez thing already, so I guess we don't really need to revisit that. But guys, while we're doing this, please like and subscribe, and please get in chat and get your QQs in. We are happy to answer everything. Really appreciate John Diaz. I know you're joking, saying favorite sports show ever, but you're here. You show up with us. Maybe it really is, and we're happy to have you. So we enjoy it with you guys as well. So, all right, Sheets, who's it went out tonight?
Jose Ramirez.
All right, I love it. That's the one. That's your big guy from earlier. I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna be so boring and say Arenado this time. So I'm gonna go and be boring still and say Bryce Harper. Now a little bit of an off the board guy maybe we can come up with.
Yeah, so I'm going to go from the late sub in, really off the board. I'm going to go Jay Bruce.
Ooh, that's a good one. Not going to end up being off the board, but I do think he's a good one.
Okay.
I think this is an off the board for a home run play. I like Ben Gamel a lot in this matchup. Trevor Williams, like leaving the ball over to a lefty that struggles with strikeouts. I just feel like a contact, there's a chance for him to hit one out. So I want to go, he's going to have some ownership. He's going to be probably 10% owned. But as a guy who's that cheap, if we can get a home run from him, that would certainly be nice. So, John, appreciate that. We try to stay unbiased, and we really appreciate that. We try to tell you exactly what we're doing. And I promise you, if you look at our lineups later tonight, they will be a reflection of what we did on the show today. Sheets, what else do we have for the people before we get out of here?
Yeah, we said something you just said. If you look at our lineups, it'll be a reflection of the show. I just want to just in my last thing before we leave, I guess I'm just kind of reserving the right to play a little more Cleveland than I may have.
I think that's a good one. I think it's a good call. By the way, I do kind of want to jump back and say, if I had to throw in one, it's only off the board because the pitcher against him. It's weird to me when no one's going to play the guy, like no one's going to play Minnesota, and I really, really, really like. I think Nelson Cruz is going to. I think he's likely to hit home runs tonight, but I really like Max Kepler. Cruz is kind of impossible to play, basically because of the price. But Kepler at 4.4, that's the guy I'd like to go back to. All right, so Jamie's in the chat. Our big winner. He took down the big one a couple weeks ago, I believe it was. Maybe it was like 10 days ago. So good to see Jamie in here. Like John says, he's got a mix of Cleveland, Philly, and the White Sox with Glasnow. I think it's interesting. I like that. I think that's we talked a lot about all those guys. Glasnow, personally, I'm not going to end up playing as much as I like him because I just don't need to. But anyway, guys, we really appreciate you guys all being here and appreciate the kind words, whether you're watching this now or later. Sheets, leave the people with something, and I'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I got to figure out what I'm doing with freaking the NBA. That's ridiculous.
Okay, well, we'll figure that out. You know what? If we need to talk about that, and still we can talk about it off air too, because I think that I figured out my answer, which is to play the mid tier, and even that gets a little tricky. So, but if you do it and you play the Middletons and Butlers, if you want to give yourself a chance to win a tournament, it's not optimal, but this is how you can win a tournament. All right. So with all that said, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. For the good people at the QLTV and Sheets, I'm Bobby saying we are out of here. Good luck tonight, everyone. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.